Greetings. Cindy Eriks here with Eriks Environmental Consulting, and I am here to discuss with you the report that you just received from us. Thank you for calling on my company for your mold assessment needs. I really do appreciate it. If you don't already know, I've had my business in Tallahassee since September of 1992. I started out as a home inspector, and in 2003, I became specialized in mold and moisture intrusion problems, indoor air quality. And then when the state licensing began, I believe it was 2012, I became a state certified mold assessor, as well as, of course, a state certified home inspector. I was already a certified home inspector, and I had already had my training and many years of experience in the mold assessment area. And I just want you to understand some things about your report because most people have questions. And I want you to know that we tailor our report to the client for the best possible understanding of what is going on and what needs to take place. And so if you want to open your report and take a look at it while you're watching the video, you'll see that the very first page, this could change over time. If I may add a different cover, a general cover, but the very first page of the report itself is a picture of the property and the incidentals about the date the inspection was performed, as well as the customer's name, the date the report was issued, the property address, and the client's name, and my certification identification. And there's a comment about scope of the services, which you would have signed a scope of services contract, which is required by my professional liability insurance carrier, so that you understand what we are doing and what we're not doing, what this does include and what it doesn't include. We can't see through walls. Sometimes we can take samples in walls, but we need to discuss that if we do any type of destructive testing that would breach any building materials. For instance, if you don't own the property, we would not even agree to that, by the way. So, we can only see what we can see. We're very experienced and knowledgeable, and we use tools. We use moisture testing tools, humidity testing tools, psychrometers, and we use testing tools to the absolute best of our ability to give you the best report, the most complete report we could possibly provide to you about your property and your concern. So on the second page, it'll describe the inspection summary, just generally what we observed when we were there and some things that you might see in the protocol that'll be listed a couple of pages further on. And this just highlights some of the things, but not all the things. So you will need to read the whole report, which I haven't read on the first page. Read every page. Every page is really important, even if some of it's boring and some of it seems repetitive. There's a reason for that. We want to make sure that if you have mold in your home or your office or your retail establishment, that it all gets removed, because it must be removed, not painted over, not kills over, not covered up, etc. So probably on almost every report, you'll see where it says expect hidden damage. There's almost always hidden damage with mold, because if you have visible mold or moisture on the surface, for instance, of sheetrock, which, by the way, if sheetrock gets wet, it needs to be removed immediately, right? As soon as it gets wet, gone, because it gets compromised. It gets compromised for a number of reasons. Part of which is that the sheetrock paper on the side of the paper that faces the inside wall cavity the paper is made from tree bark, and that inherently is subject to quick mold growth, really, really quick, despite what your insurance company might say to you, very quick, like within hours. which is why if you look at one of my videos on my channel, on my website, you'll see where I say, if your sheetrock gets wet, go cut it out. Even if you have to use a kitchen knife, be very careful, or have somebody do it for you, but cut out the wet sheetrock, wet carpet, wet pad, wet tack strip, because that will very quickly, in our climate in the Southeast, will grow mold quickly. So expect hidden damage, and also expect that there's laws governing our licensing and mold inspections and mold assessments, mold remediation. And just know that if somebody offers you a free inspection, a free assessment, it's not going to be free ultimately, and you got to really watch out for that person. Now, I'm not talking about the remediator you call because you don't know who else to call first, so you call the remediator and they come out to take a look and they see that you have mold, and then that remediator says you must have an assessment by a Florida state licensed mold assessor before we can start your project. We need to know everything that's wrong. Otherwise, if the person is saying, oh, I'll do a free inspection, oh, and here's an estimate for the work, and oh, I'm going to waive the fee for the post-test and the clearance testing that verifies what good of a job I did. Those things are resulting in horrendous problems, by the way. Horrendous problems. People are ending up with more mold than they had before they called that individual. So just know, if the person's doing that, they're breaking the law of the 468 statute that governs our licensing. And if they're going to break the law, what else are they going to do? What else are they going to hide? What else? How else unscrupulously are they going to behave? Okay, so I have several videos about mold ethics and things like this. I have several videos about prevention, getting like there's sensors you can put around your property to it'll just, high decibel sound will go off as soon as any moisture hits certain areas. You place them in certain areas where it's more likely to have water, around your water heater, under your sink, next to your dishwasher, next to your air conditioner. There's lots of places to put those sensors. I have two sets at my house. One's Bluetooth, which will alert me on my phone, and the other is local. And so I just have to double check. Doesn't mean you're going to prevent the mold, but you're going to prevent a big problem. Okay. So anyway, sorry that I digress here on this, but I just wanted to really share that with you. Oh yeah, I was going to say expect hidden damage. So the rule with the Florida laws is that if it's 10 square feet of mold or more, you have to hire a state certified mold assessor to assess and write a protocol, which you have in your hands right now, and a separate independent, not the same person, because there's a conflict of interest. Not the same person comes and follows the protocol. And if somebody doesn't want to follow a protocol, you'll see in my report, it says it's a big red flag. If they don't want to follow the protocol, you got to hold them to it when they give you an estimate. You got to make sure they do everything that it says. There's a reason that we write everything in there. It's to protect you. So that 10 square feet, by the way, you can have mold like the size of a quarter on your sheetrock. And when that gets opened up, it's going to be more than 10 square feet. I mean, we've seen it. I've seen it for years, for decades. I've seen it happen. So don't let anybody like cut into a wet wall where there's probably mold without a containment, a sealed plastic, basically room attached to that wall with the HEPA air scrubber. Otherwise, once you open that up and the mold spores come into the air, and if you got your heat or your air on, it's just drawn straight into the HVAC system through your house, and now you've got probably $9,000-$10,000 worth more of cleaning to do because somebody didn't follow the protocol right, or you thought you'd just take care of it yourself. So anyway, just be really cautious. Sometimes you can take care of it yourself. You just have to know what to do, right? So I'm all about just knowing what to do. And we guide people that want to do their own projects. We'll guide you through that too, if that's what you want to do. I don't recommend it because there's so much equipment you need, and there's so much information and knowledge you need. But anyway, on the next page is the bioaerosol and surface sampling. So we list out here that we took samples. Usually we'll take air samples and surface samples. Frequently, we will take what we call a general surface sample, where we take a swab and we go around each level floor to see if it picks up any of the really bad toxic molds, the ones that are from wet building materials. Because sometimes you don't see wet building materials, but the person that owned the house before you covered some up or just didn't know what they were doing or had a vendor come in and did the wrong thing. We see that all the time with dry outs. And I've got a whole nother video on dry outs. If you get wet, what you should and shouldn't do. Using fans is not a good idea, because if mold is growing, fans blow the mold all over the house, right? So anyway, it talks about, there's two check boxes, one for common mold spores, which are normally in the outside air, especially in our region of the country. There's common mold spores out there. It's when those mold spores come inside and they get fed water or humidity and they go really high. So it's elevated spores we're talking about, right? And we check these boxes that you have elevated. It's like elevated mold spores, not just, because there's going to be mold spores, okay? And then there's some two areas, the ones where it's water damaged building materials, which are molds that the media talks about as the toxic black molds, but Stachybotrys, Chaetomium, Mammalia, Trichoderma, Fusarium, Alternaria. Those are the kinds of molds, and there's probably a couple more, but those are the kind of molds when we see those, but you don't see any evidence of the physical mold, then you got to hunt for it, get a history, and find out where it might be hiding. Okay. Sometimes there was a remote remediation done on the property before, and nobody told you about it because you haven't lived there that long, or own the property that long, depending on what kind of property it is, of course. I'm just talking about houses right now, but we also do commercial inspections as well. But sometimes there's just no knowledge, and there had been a leak, and somebody didn't take care of it correctly. And on the other side of the building, there's mold hidden, and now it's getting picked up in a sample. So we say on this page that don't try to interpret the lab report. It's really took us years to really get a good handle and be really educated on how to interpret the lab report. But the best thing you can do is go way down in the report, way down. I'll get to it in a little bit, but there's a place in the report that says what we're looking for in the way of mold levels when the job is done. So go there and look at what we're looking for, and that'll help you understand. If you want to, some people really want to analyze the lab report, but hold it up against what we say it should look like at the end of the job. Okay. So, a lot of people get a little too hung up on that. So just not to worry. So the next page starts the mold remediation protocol, and it breaks it down into how the areas in the property have to be contained. And there's pictures at the end of the report that show what containment looks like. And containment is floor to ceiling, usually. Occasionally it can be a little bit different, but floor to ceiling, plastic sealed. Now it's going to be sealed with heavy duty tape at the ceiling and the floor and the walls. It will damage your ceiling and walls and maybe your floor, mostly the ceiling and walls, where there's drywall. There'll be damage there. Expect there to be damage there. You want that seal as tight as possible. The only way you can get it is with a really good adhesive, and it's going to damage that material. So that's going to have to be part of the repair, or that's something you're going to have to deal with after to, do a patch of your coating on your sheetrock, and then painting. And it may require you to paint the whole room so everything matches, the whole ceiling. You know what I'm saying? So just know that that's going to happen. It happened in my own house. I had a problem where water came in the front door, went under the floor. I had to put a containment up and just pick the floor up to see, but it really didn't turn out being a big problem, but I was concerned about it. And I've got a damaged ceiling, right? That happened like a year ago. I still have a damaged ceiling. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. It doesn't look that bad, but anyway, just know that these engineering controls, the plastic sealed to make a sealed space for when materials are removed, is critical. But what also is critical is the engineering controls, which are HEPA air scrubbers. They're big machines that have high levels of HEPA filtration to trap any mold spores that get out into the air. Okay. And so you have one of those machines and a dehumidifier, because the humidity in the entire property must be maintained at 50% the whole time. So if your air conditioner is down because it needs to all be sealed off for the project, you need dehumidifiers all around the house. You can save some money by buying one or two of your own private dehumidifiers that are draining properly so that it runs all the time, which if you look at one of my videos, everybody should have a dehumidifier on hand for several reasons. So it's a good investment for your home, okay? I have 3 in my house. And I have humidity gauges that constantly monitor in case my air conditioner messes up and I don't notice it. I'll just be able to see whether my humidity is climbing. So you really don't want it above 50, 55%. So you can track that. But that's another video. Please go take a look at the videos because there's a lot in prevention, and I'm all about prevention. So the HEPA air scrubber has to be inside the containment, but it also has to be outside the containment because the containment has a zipper door where the technicians come and go to do the work. So when they come out, they may have some spores on them. There's a HEPA air scrubber right there. And your vents are sealed off so that's nothing's being brought back into the system, the HVAC system, right, to carry it to other parts of the house. So HEPA air scrubbers inside and outside of the contained areas and dehumidifiers. And it's noisy. Just know it's going to be loud. It's going to be loud. It's going to be annoying. So it might be best if you leave the property during the remediation if you can. I know sometimes you can't. And sometimes it's just a small part of the building that's being remediated. But you got to put up with the noise, and you cannot breach the containment. There's nobody allowed to go in there except the technicians. Because if you have come from someplace and you bring in mold on your body, we have seen it so many times. You say, no, I haven't been in a moldy place. Well, you don't even know. You don't even know if you've been in a moldy place unless you just tested that and sent it to the lab and got the results back. You won't know if you're carrying it with you. Your plumber won't know. Your HVAC, any workers that are outside the mold remediators, they will not know whether they've been in a moldy environment. Heck, they might be living in a moldy environment and not even know it. It's extremely common. So the next page, and maybe on the same page, depends on how many items are in the removal of building materials as to whether it goes to the next page. But then there's a whole list. It goes room by room on what building materials need to be removed. And in every instance, the containment needs to be present. Okay? So just know that. And in every situation, you cannot go in there until they're done. We've been back and we have tested and inspected and got the results back from the lab, and we say it's okay to break the containment down now, because sometimes probably about 25% of even the best mold remediators will fail the first time. It's just the nature of mold. It's a whole long story that I don't have time to go into right now, but that is just the nature of it, okay? And so it goes on to talk about what else needs to be cleaned inside every containment. Every surface is going to have to be wiped down. So if the containment can be made smaller, say for instance in the kitchen, if you can take half the kitchen and contain it in the area that needs to be removed, then you won't have to be cleaning the walls, floors, fixtures, windows, doors, trim, knobs, everything in the rest of the room, right? So everything would have to be wiped down with antimicrobial. Quite frequently, what happens is it gets HEPA vacuumed first, then it gets wiped down with an EPA registered antimicrobial, and then right before we're coming to do the clearance, it gets HEPA vacuumed again with new filters, okay? So the HVAC system is going to totally depend on how the samples came back. Sometimes the HVAC system doesn't need anything. It just needs to be kept sealed off for the project. And sometimes there's high levels of common mold spores, elevated mold spores in the system. We check usually by a return air swab sample, sometimes also a supply sample, sometimes inside the unit. It just depends on the circumstances of the project. But we can't test every line in the ductwork, but that return air is a really good sample to get because everything comes back to the return. So it's not perfect, but it's super helpful, right? If I only could have one sample, if somebody said to me, you could take one sample, Cindy, on this house, I'd say take that one, right? Because that'd be the best one. So if you have mold, elevated mold inside the system, Sometimes it can be cleaned and sometimes it can't. Usually the HVAC air handler unit, also known as AHU, that can be cleaned, but it has to be cleaned in very detail. And it's listed in the report, right? Every single wire. I mean, it's more of a moldy-like environment in there because it's moist, right? It draws humidity out of the air, and it comes through over the coil in that system. And so every wire, every nut, every bolt, every inside wall, every part of the coil, that all has to be cleaned inside and out. And the ducts frequently need to be cleaned, and a lot of times they cannot be cleaned because they're flexible duct, and it's hard. They've got like ridges that go down, and getting into every ridge. I don't know that you'll have any HVAC contractor cleaning ducts will guarantee, but some have been successfully cleaned. And so it's definitely better if it's possible because it's much less expensive. It's way expensive, of course, to replace ducts. So we go on to say on the next page, always anticipate additional damage. We write that in a few places, right? And then we have the cleanings and what happens in the wall cavities. If a wall cavity's been affected and wood has been affected, studs, and they need to be cleaned. They need to be sealed with a Fiberlock 6100 clear only. There's a reason why I would recommend that product. I would not use anything else, and clear. A lot of them want to use paint, white paint. And white paint doesn't tell me if they cleaned it well. Sometimes the reason for sealing it with the clear Fiberlock 6100 is because you can see how good they were able to clean it, right? So it's accountability. Number one, it's like you can see the mold was removed except for some of these spots that got really embedded. And that's where the Fiberlock 6100 clear comes into place. I recommend that every time on a foundation crawl space if you're not encapsulating. I've been using it on my own home for, golly, probably 20 years, 15, 20 years. It's really served. It really serves the surfaces well, and for maintenance. And so then there's the nevers and the always, and so um, and that's for the remediator to, never cover stuff up. We need to see it, so we need to be able to do our inspection and testing before any new building materials are installed. So if, for instance, ceilings were removed, they will take the ceiling down with the insulation that comes with it, and then they'll put a clear plastic up over that so that you can get a contained area to operate the HEPA air scrubber in. That's okay. If they had to breach an exterior wall, and exterior wall is exposed, sealing it from the outside is best because we need to see the cavity. We need to see if it's clean. We need to see if the mold has been removed. So we also say the HVAC, or any work with the HVAC must be completed within that mold remediation and under the supervision of the mold remediator. And it must be ready for us when we come back for our clearance. Otherwise, there'll be extra charges to have to return to the property. We also indicate that there's no fogging as a method for mold remediation. I see advertisements of people, they'll come in and fog your house and get rid of all your mold, and that's all they'll do. No, it does not work. Fogging helps to help drive the spores down to the ground so they make sure they collect all the spores that are floating around. That's the only real helpful tool. It's a helpful tool is all it is, but it cannot be used. And so the report goes on to say to make sure all site technicians have read the entire report and they know what they're supposed to be doing. Should be posted on the job site, really. The protocol aspect should be posted on the job site, because if they're like, what was I supposed to do there? They can go back to the wall and take a look at what it is. Now, if you go to hire somebody for your remediation and they say they will not work with the Eric's Environmental, consider that a big red flag. We hold remediators accountable for removing all the mold. There's many out there that do not like that. They don't want to be held accountable. And I caution you, I've got several videos on my website about this topic, about the ethics about the poor ethics in our industry. I'm very embarrassed by it. So we also say on this last page before my signature is that if you, we recommend that you get, 2 or 3 estimates so that you can compare. You got to make sure the estimate has every single thing in it that we wrote in the protocol. And it's not hard to compare. You go to that page, which says, it says mold remediation protocol, and you start there. And you have the engineering controls and the content items listed. If there something needs to be done there, how they're supposed to be handled, because all the contents in any room that's getting contained needs to be protected if they're not affected. They need to be sealed off completely so that they don't get infiltrated with mold. But then it has removal of building materials, and it lists item by item what must be removed. So you need to compare this to your estimate. You need to make sure everything's on it and not more than we say is on it. Okay. We see that a lot where they add a bunch of things that don't need to happen, like wiping down the whole house. Most of the time, the whole house doesn't need to be wiped down. And that's a lot of money, thousands of dollars it could end up being. So if you feel not so capable to compare the estimates, we will, for a fee, review 2 to 3 estimates for $150. It takes time, and I'm sorry we have to charge for it, but it just takes time for us to do that. Okay, like it will take you time to do it, but you can do this. Okay, like you can do this. But if you feel unsure, feel free to get with us. And after that, you're going to see pictures, lots of pictures of every place we went. You'll see the damaged areas. You'll see moisture readings. You'll see humidity readings and things like that. And when you get to the end, at the end of that section, you'll see where the lab report's attached. Okay, so you'll be able to look at the lab report and see what the lab report says. And then after the lab report, there's 3 pages. And at the top, it's highlighted in green. I hope you can see that. Let's see. Sorry, it's highlighted in green up there, right? And it says this goes to every report. Every report has this attachment, okay? 3 pages of requirements on all mold remediation projects. It's really, really important. Some of it's a reiteration of what we said before. A lot of it has to do with what I already said to you in this video, right? So, but do look at it, okay? Do look at it. It is important. It is important. It does need to be followed. It does need to be followed, and it's at the end. At the end of this report, at this section, in this 3-page attachment, at the end of that, in fact, it says 3-page attachment. It's page 3 of the 3-page attachment, and it says post remediation test and inspection guidelines. And right here, it has that list of what the mold levels we're looking for. Okay. So that's what you compare to your labs if you're really wanting to compare the labs, okay? It describes what containment means in really full detail. Some people are new to the job and they don't understand, okay? We see a lot of technicians that just don't know what they're doing. They're not well trained. If you pick the right company, you won't run into that problem. Most of the time. And then there's a page for maintenance recommendations. And these are things that I've seen over the years that will be helpful to people to prevent mold problems or limit their mold problems. So feel free to go there, and also feel free to go to my website, indoor-air-quality-matters.com, for videos teaching you how to prevent. We would much rather have you not have to call us. I know that sounds strange, but then there's an attachment called controlling indoor humidity. So critical in our environment in Tallahassee, especially, but everywhere. Okay. Everywhere can have this problem, and especially the last several years with the new HVAC systems that don't seem to be working properly or are not calibrated correctly. If you don't monitor your indoor humidity, you won't know you have a problem until you start seeing mold growing on the shoes and the clothes in your closet, which is not a good thing, because probably means everything needs to be wiped down and you got several $1,000s in cleaning alone costs. Okay. So you can catch your HVAC problems early. And I'm seeing more and more and more. I even got duped by my HVAC contractor when I replaced my air conditioner 2 years ago. And I begged him, please take a look. I think I need a 2.5 ton, not a 3 ton, based on what I'm seeing in the industry on the job. No, 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 Cindy, you need a 3 ton. And I cannot maintain my humidity without a dehumidifier. That's not right. Spending $10,000 on an air conditioner that doesn't control the humidity in the summertime. And in the wintertime, especially in Tallahassee, humidity levels can be really high and you don't know it because it feels so cool. So you don't feel like there's a problem, but then you might find the humidity at 75 or 80% if it's 62 degrees out and you think it's okay. It's not okay. Mold will start setting itself up, and all you need is like a water loss or some kind of a higher humidity happens, and then you have a mold problem just from humidity alone. Also, keeping your air conditioner fan set to the auto always. If you set it to on, you will like almost always create a problem in your house. The last pages here have diagrams of the containment and the negative pressure. Sometimes they need to put negative pressure in from a containment that goes out to an outside window with the HEPA air scrubber to draw it away, okay? And then also you'll see frequently a HEPA filter put in the middle of the plastic wall to help because the air is going to move, doors are going to open and close, you're going to have pressure changes, and sometimes that just pulls on it and pulls on it and it pulls on the adhesive that's holding the wall together. So that helps with that. And that's the end of the report. I encourage you to read it completely and fully. Once you have read the whole report and watched this video in its entirety, please feel free to call us back if you do have questions. You need to choose your remediator wisely. We don't automatically send a list of recommended remediators. But if you do need that, let us know. We'll be glad to send it to you. It's just, I feel kind of awkward just sending it. I just want to make sure that you get the job done properly, that all the mold is removed from your space and it doesn't make you sick. So once again, I do thank you for trusting my company to just give you a report and look after you. My company motto is that we care, and we do really care about you. And it's corny, I've been saying this my whole 33 years, since 1992. It's like once you're our customer, you're always our customer. Always feel free to call us if you have a question. It doesn't mean we have to come out and charge you to come look at something, but you may have a question about your home or a repair on your home or an appliance or something like that. And we're always glad to help you, to answer your questions and send you in a direction that might be helpful to you rather than you spinning your wheels trying to get some answers. And we don't know everything, and when we don't, we'll send you on to somebody that does, because we do care about you and your family. So God bless you, and thank you again for your business. Cindy Eriks signing off.